All right, back with us on the Krueg Show. Grant Napear in the house on a Tuesday morning as we talk a little NBA playoffs. Look ahead to Game 2. Warriors-Nuggets go tonight. Good morning, Grant. How are you?
I'm doing good. How do you like my beautiful custom-made background? It's pretty nice, huh? Pretty high tech, don't you think?
It's amazing what you've been able to accomplish there. How's it
Good to see
going?
you, man. Everything's great. Great to see you.
Well, it's great to see you, and let's get right into it. It's funny. I'm watching Milwaukee and Boston the other day, Game 1, and man, Jason Tatum looks so good in that first round, and then Giannis shows up, and Giannis was just too much for the number one defense in the league, and Milwaukee takes a 1-0 lead. What'd you think? What'd you think of Game 1, Bucks and Celtics?
Without Chris Middleton, Larry, think about that for a minute. Right?
Yeah.
You thought that would be like the difference, or at least I thought I was going to give Boston the edge, and they still may win the series. But you and I had this conversation a couple of weeks ago, and you asked me who I thought the MVP of the league was, and I said Giannis. And you could pick Embiid, you could pick Nikola Jokic, but when you see the way Giannis plays in Game 1 without a star two guard in Chris Middleton, and what they were able to do to Boston, that was very surprising to me. Again, the series isn't over, but you asked me what I think. Giannis Antetokounmpo is a freak, all right? That's what he is. He's unbelievable, Larry.
Yeah. I mean, and his growth and his improvement curve is he just keeps getting better and better and better. Do you like Milwaukee to get out of the East?
I'm not going to close the door on Miami. Nobody's talking about Miami for whatever reason, and they were the number one seed. They've got the table set now with Philadelphia and the injury to Embiid, and Harden looks awful. And so to me, Miami is going to get to the Eastern Conference Finals. If it's they and Milwaukee, I think that would be a hell of a series. If you're asking me right now who I would pick, I think it's a toss-up. You'd have to let me know if Middleton's going to be available to play or not in the Eastern Conference Finals. That may sway my decision. Let's wait until we get there. But I'm not selling Miami short, Larry. I'm not. I think they're really good. They defend on most nights. I think they will get through Philadelphia. Philadelphia, man, just the worst luck in the world with Embiid out for Game 1 and, of course, Game 2, and we don't know after that. I don't think there's any way in the world Miami's not going to win this series. So I'm still thinking Miami is going to come out of the East, but I want to wait and see what the health of the teams are first before we get to that round.
Miami's so underrated in so many ways. Yes. Tyler Hero had 25 off the bench, and then without Embiid, Bam Adebayo is just doing whatever he wants. I mean, Adebayo's stat line, 24, 12, 4 assists, 2 steals, 1 block. He was plus 26 in 34 minutes. And, Philly's shorthanded, and Bam's making them pay.
Not only is Philadelphia shorthanded, but does James Harden look anything like James Harden did in Houston, Larry?
No,
I mean, I know I bagged on Harden, but the reality is he's a hell of an offensive player. And this talks about the future. If I'm a general manager, I wouldn't give James Harden a dime. I really mean that. I wouldn't give Kyrie Irving a dime. I just wouldn't. But what do you think about Harden? Does he even look close, Larry, to what we are accustomed to seeing from Harden? So assuming that that's going to be the way it is for the rest of the series, and Embiid doesn't come back to at least Game 3, maybe Game 4, I have a question, Larry. Will Philadelphia even win a game in this series?
Yeah, I mean seriously, I think it's a great question. I think Miami may whitewash him right out of there. What do you make of Harden? Because Harden's been two different guys in the regular season. He's a star type talent. When it comes to the pressure, when it comes to playoff basketball, guy just evaporates, and we've seen it. It's not like it's a one-off. This is what the guy does. This is what he. This is basically what he's been in his career in the playoffs. It just doesn't happen. He's on a totally different level, and it's always beneath what he does in the regular season.
Yeah, but and you're right. And I think you and I have talked about this in the past. Not only is that true, but I'm looking at James Harden, and I'm asking the question, Larry, is his best basketball behind him? Is he now on the decline of his career based on what we've seen this year? Okay. I mean, did we really see, other than a couple of weeks, the real James Harden in Brooklyn? And then he wanted to get out of there and had a hamstring, didn't want to play, let down another organization, goes to Philadelphia, was good early once he decided that his back was feeling better, or his hamstring, or whatever the hell it was. he was good for a couple of weeks, but we haven't seen the consistency offensively from Harden. And I don't know if it's going to come back, Larry. And that's why I don't know if Philadelphia is going to win a game in this series. But if I'm a GM, think about what Daryl Morey, the general manager of Philadelphia, gave up to get Harden. Say all you want about Simmons, who hasn't played, but he gave up some valuable role players as well. I just don't see how that deal works out for the Sixers. I just don't.
Isn't it weird? Morey has this odd fascination with Harden. I mean, it's like he has this belief in Harden that he cannot be, pulled off of. I mean, he's just all in on James, and he has been for years.
And here's the other aspect that we're not even talking about. Harden's not playing in Houston anymore. Okay, he's playing in Philadelphia. And if James Harden, after game 2, which we won't know the result, goes home and plays in games 3 and 4 the way he did in game 1, the Sixers fans are going to be ruthless.
Yeah, they're going to.
They are going to boo him off the floor. It is going to be an ugly scene in Philadelphia. And then is Harden going to change his tune and try to get the hell out of Philadelphia the way he tried to get out of Houston, which worked, and tried to get out of Brooklyn and worked? Harden has no idea what's ahead for him if he plays poorly in games 3 and 4, because the Sixers fans, they're going to let him hear it.
Oh, they're ruthless. They're absolutely ruthless. Let's talk a little bit about Dallas and Phoenix. Phoenix wins game 1, 121-114. And for 3 quarters, DeAndre Ayton just absolutely dominated Dallas.
Yep.
But then in the 4th quarter, it just seemed like Dallas's small ball lineup started to turn a little momentum. They held Ayton scoreless in that 4th. Did Dallas find an ingredient or a path to victory in this series? What give me your breakdown on that 4th quarter and what we saw and what you think we're going to see going forward?
Well, first of all, I thought Dallas lost the game in the 1st quarter. I didn't think they were ready. I think they were overwhelmed. Maybe I'm not really sure what you would attribute to. I thought that the Mavericks lost the game early. I thought they lost. You can lose a game in the 1st quarter. You can't win a game in the 1st quarter. I really thought they lost the game in the 1st quarter, but I do think the adjustments work. Now, Larry, this. Playoffs are about chess matches as the series goes on. Team does something, makes an adjustment, you make an adjustment. They make an adjustment, you make an adjustment. I think this series is going deep. I think it's going to go the distance. I think Dallas will win a game in Phoenix. I think Phoenix will win a game in Dallas. I think Dallas may have to win 2 games in Phoenix to win this series, because I think Phoenix, Larry, is a little bit better. Yes, Dallas has Luka, but how great has Chris Paul been in this series? And you talked about Ayton. The Mavericks will make adjustments. We saw it in the 4th quarter. But again, I counter back to you. What adjustments will Phoenix make in game 2 to counter what Dallas is going to do? This is truly a matchup of stars. Okay, it's Luka, it's Chris Paul. You talked about Ayton. Phoenix has a very deep roster. I think in order for Dallas, though, to win this series, they're going to need bigger games from their quote-unquote role players. You know what Luka's going to do. You can't have any other guys really having off nights against this deep Phoenix team if you're going to win this series. That's how I analyze it.
It's funny. You saw the Kings when the Kings played team ball there in the early 2000s. We're watching Kerr's Golden State Warriors right now. They play team ball. Everybody touches the ball for the most part. We're talking about Harden and his, he evaporates in the playoffs. They don't really play like a team concept. He dominates the ball. At least he did in Houston and maybe to a little bit lesser degree in Philadelphia. Let's talk about Dallas for a second, because Luka's back. And Luka is awesome. And he went for 45 or whatever. He looked incredible. But the rest of that team gets caught just watching him. And I'm just kind of wondering what you think is the best way to play around a guy like Luka, because he's a tremendous player. He's one of the great scorers in the league. And it's like all eyes are on him, and I get that. But then there's a stagnant feel to the Mavericks offense. Everybody's kind of just, Luka, do your thing. What do you is it Luka and 4 other guys, or are they a team?
I think that's a great question. And I think that's why Porzingis is not there anymore, because he couldn't play with Luka. I think playing with a ball dominant guard is really difficult in the NBA in the land of egos and I want mine, give me mine, give me mine. I think it's really hard. I think it takes great coaching and it takes certain individuals that understand who the star of the team is and what their role is. Not everyone can accept that role or be comfortable in the role, or when they're not in the gym, be all happy that they're on a team that has a star. You know what, Larry? Contracts have bonuses, how many minutes you play, how many points, everything else. I don't know if it is a recipe for success. I mean, look at Houston and all the years we just talked about with James Harden. Always had the ball, right? Not the easiest guy in the world to be on the floor with, and they could never make it out of the Western Conference Finals. I think Dallas is Luka and everyone else. And I think it takes a certain special type of player and players to make it work long term. Now, with that said, I still think this series is going deep. Larry, do you think this series is going a minimum of 6 games? I think it's going to go the distance. I just think that Dallas will figure out a way, as you were talking about with those adjustments. I do think based on game 1, and look at how many points Dallas scored, even though they got off to a bad start, that bodes well for me if I'm a Mavs fan, because their role players didn't really play well in game 1. I think they'll play better. That's why I think this series goes at least 6 and probably 7 games.
Yeah. I mean, if it's 6, it ends in Phoenix, in Dallas. I think Phoenix is going to win the series for sure, but yeah. I would probably say, I probably agree, 6 or maybe 7. I could see Phoenix winning in Dallas. Let's get to Golden State. Give me your takeaway on game 1 of Golden State Memphis.
Well, before this series began, I thought the difference in the series would be the experience of Golden State and the lack of experience against Memphis. I went back and I analyzed Memphis and Minnesota in round 1. And I looked at the games that Memphis won that they should not have won, okay? Because Minnesota could not execute down the stretch. And I'm like, the one thing I can tell you about this series, Larry, and I think you would agree, the Warriors may not win 4 in a row. They may not win the series in 5. But in the games that the Warriors lose in this series, it won't be because they beat themselves, right? In game 1, you could not have the table set any better for Memphis. The Draymond Green ejection, Clay missing 2 free throws late. The table was set for Memphis as good as you could have. And I believe the experience of the Warriors was the difference in game 1. So I think Golden State's going to win this series. First of all, I think they're a little bit of a better team. Not a lot better, but a little better. And I think their experience, which we saw in game 1, is going to be the difference. Because, Larry, I didn't like the way Memphis played in the closing minutes of some of those games against Minnesota. I thought the Timberwolves lost those games more than Memphis won. And again, I don't see Golden State doing that. Their experience is going to be the difference in this series. Golden State is not going to beat themselves in all likelihood in close games down the stretch. That, to me, is the difference in this series.
Where's Dylan Brooks? Where's the Dylan Brooks from last year? Where's the Dylan Brooks that looked like the best player on the team at times before, Ja's an incredible star, but Brooks last year was looking like their leader. This year, I mean, I'm looking at some of his numbers. Man, Dylan Brooks has not gotten off in this series. I mean, he really has yet to, kind of make his presence felt. That to me is one of the big questions going forward is where is Dylan Brooks? He averaged 25 a game in last year's playoff run. Mm-hmm. He's averaging 15 this year on 36% shooting. Game 1 was his 4th of 7 playoff games, shooting worse than 30% from the field. He doesn't look like the same guy.
He doesn't. And they're not going to win this series if those numbers don't change significantly. They're just not. He's too valuable for that team. Think about this. Think about the record that Memphis had this year. I don't have it off the top of my head. In the games that Morant missed, which were significant, he missed quite a bit of action.
Yeah, they had a good record.
That's right. How many teams, like if Golden State lost, when they lose Steph Curry, or, when you look at stars of teams and Morant is the star of a team, how is it that Memphis was able to win at such a high percentage? The reason is they have a really deep team, and their other players are really good, including Brooks.
Yeah.
You and I both know this. Memphis will not win this series. They may not even win 2 games in this series if Brooks doesn't play a lot better. That's a great point on your. And I'll tell you something else. You made a fabulous point last week, and I'll share this story with you. You were talking last week on this show about Gary Payton and how valuable you thought he could be in the playoffs. And I had lunch last week with Jerry Reynolds, and I asked Jerry.
I saw the picture. Jerry looked great. Jerry's like timeless, man. He looks the same as like 1995. It's amazing.
He's the best. I love the guy. So I talked to Jerry about doing the show with you and what you said about Peyton. And Jerry said, Larry's 100% correct. He's absolutely 100% spot on about Peyton. And I believe it was either that night, Larry, or the next night that he started, right? And then you look what he did in game 1. That was a great observation on your part. And again, give credit to Kerr for, putting all the pieces together, putting the best lineups on the floor, being able to win that series against Denver in 5, and then go into Memphis. And I'll use the word steal because I really thought they stole game 1, particularly with what happened to Green. So you're spot on with that analysis of Peyton. Again, I just think the Warriors are a little bit better than Memphis, especially with the way Brooks is playing. But I think their experience is going to be the difference in this series. And I think their experience is going to carry them into the NBA Finals. Now, you and I also talked about this when the playoffs began, or maybe 2 weeks ago. I want to go back to Draymond Green here. You were talking about how he looks different, and I agreed. I watched Draymond Green, and we can debate all you want whether that's a flagrant one. All right, we're back. Can you hear me?
I got you.
All right. So Draymond, I know you and most people feel it was not a flagrant 2. I disagree. I thought it, with the way the game has been called in the last 2 or 3 years, I did. But you could convince me that I'm wrong and you're right. But let's leave that on the back burner. His behavior, his antics, while all of that is going on, okay, and the dance and going into the locker room, now, Larry, he is playing with no more cards in his hand in terms of a future suspension, right?
Right.
Are you
He's at
convinced
2 points, 4 gets a
that
suspension?
Draymond Green, that's correct. Are you convinced that Green is going to be able to maintain his composure where his absence does not affect the team like it did in the finals in 2016 against Cleveland? I don't know the answer to that. I thought maybe he had gotten over that, but then he even admittedly comes out and says, I'm not going to change. You and I both know, Larry, there's no one that can talk to Draymond about that behavior. He's going to do and act the way he always has. He even admitted so after the game at his hotel room in Memphis. That, to me, may be the biggest concern I see with the Warriors going forward. Because lineup-wise, I think they have the best roster in the West. Experience-wise, by far, they had the best experience in the West. The unknown here is Green. What's going to happen as we go deeper into the playoffs, assuming the Warriors, Larry, go into the next round, and I think they will, the bright lights, everything else is magnified. The games then become higher in terms of its stakes. Do you think Draymond's going to be able to behave, Larry? Do you think he's going to get suspended again before these playoffs are over? I think it's a big question mark for Golden State.
I'm not worried about it because he's such a smart player and he's learned his lesson. And yes, he got himself. I mean, I kind of push back on the crowd. To me, it was a terrible call. It should have been a flagrant 1, not a flagrant 2, whatever.
Okay.
But he's got to know better. He's got a reputation. NBA officials officiate the name on the back. They more than the name on the front. They know who everybody is. Everybody's got this intimate knowledge of each other. Boogie Cousins doesn't get away with things. Draymond doesn't get away with things. Guys who have had priors don't get away with things. And so Draymond's got to know that's the situation. But he should not have been run from that game. My goodness, I'm so unbelievably tired of the bloated egos and reputations and name brand of NBA officials. Name me an NFL official, nobody can. Name me a Major League Baseball player, nobody can. But man, everybody off the top of their lips can name almost every NBA official, Kenny Mauer, this guy, that guy. Everybody, they all have reputations. It's just, I'm so sick. You call a timeout in the NBA, 3 guys go back to the huddle, 2 guys go to negotiate future calls with the officials. I'm so tired of the high profile nature of the NBA officials. I can't think of any other sport where they take key figures off the floor out of a playoff game. Doesn't happen in the NHL, doesn't happen in baseball, doesn't happen in football. It happens. I can cite chapter and verse. It's happened like 5 different times in the NBA.
Okay. You know what?
I'm so sick of it. Let these guys play. You're not the story. You're not the show. Nobody's there to watch you.
Don't disagree, but you said something that I'm gonna counter with. You said that Draymond needs to know better. He does know better. He's not able to control himself. Forget about the foul. How about the antics? Does that bother you, his antics, or that doesn't bother you after the scene? I understand the frustration. I understand all of that.
It's beyond tired. It's beyond tired at this point.
Where's the composure, Larry?
Yeah.
Where's the composure?
But so this, I think he's got the 2 points now, and he's going to be baited into more action going forward.
Yes.
I think he's going to be able to totally block it out and stay laser focused.
I hope so.
I really believe that, because I think he's on a mission. I think he understands. If he wins another title, he's Hall of Fame. If he doesn't, he's borderline. Now, I'd put him in, but I think other people may say he's borderline. But he cements his Hall of Fame resume if Golden State gets another ring. And I think he knows that. I also think that it was it wasn't intentional. Don't get me wrong. It was not intentional. He didn't want to get run. But the effect of that was really interesting, because Memphis won 3 out of 4 in the regular season. They had Golden State's number, but they played. Taylor Jenkins deserves Coach of the Year. They played at a playoff caliber level, I thought, all year, and they definitely did in the 4 games against Golden State. As soon as Green went out, Memphis was expected to win that game, and the burden of expectations on a young team and a young coach against all that the Warriors are as far as experience was too much. And if Memphis had gotten game 1, maybe it's a long series, but no, the Warriors got game 1, and I think they're gonna whitewash them. I think it's gonna be, 5 games, all really intense. 1 goes to the Grizzlies, 4 goes to Golden State, and they're moving on to the conference finals. That's how I see that series.
Well, we're gonna learn everything we need to know about Memphis in this next game. It reminds me, if I can give you this comparison, in 2002. The Kings have finally gotten over the hump and were the number 1 seed against the Lakers, and they make it to the Western Conference Finals, and they've got the table set. They had played so well against the Lakers during the year, and the Lakers come in the Western Conference Finals and win game 1. And I thought the series was over. I'm like, wow, Kings fight all year to get home court. They win 61 games. They're the number 1 seed, and they've been waiting for this, and they lose to the Lakers. Now, I know that's the Western Conference Finals, and those were 2 veteran teams, and Memphis I wouldn't put in that category. But, Larry, I don't think Memphis will win a game if they lose game 2. I know you think they, and they not only have to win game 2, they have to look good in doing so. In my opinion, they really have a legitimate chance in this series. I don't see it.
I agree. Yeah. Let's talk about game 2, because I think it's interesting on a couple fronts. One, Desmond Bane has a back injury, and he's questionable for game 2. This was another area. You saw Gary Payton flush a left-handed jam in the first half over Bane. Yep. The length of Gary Payton bothers Bane. Bane's a phenomenal shooter. He had 24, 25 in a couple of games, I believe, last round, and he gets it going. But he's 6'4" with kind of short arms, and Payton is a long 6'2", 6'3". With crazy wingspan, plays more like 6'5", 6'6". To me, Peyton on Bane or the Warriors shutting off Bane's offense is really one of the major keys to this series. Because if he can't come along for 20, 25, now there's a lot more pressure on the other guys, and I think their whole recipe for success involves Bane going for 20 plus.
Well, you and I talked about this. Is there a matchup on the floor in this series that scares you from the Warriors' perspective. I think they just and I know that you said they lost 3 or 4 during the regular season. I'd have to go back and look at where all the guys playing. Was that when Morant was in? Was he out? Was Curry in? What about Clay? I mean, we can get distorted with numbers during the regular season,
Totally.
as you know.
Absolutely.
So I don't really pay attention that much. But when I look at Memphis's roster and how they play, and I look at Golden State's roster and how they play, and then I look at matchups, and then I talk about experience. Is there a matchup on the floor in this series that concerns you for the Warriors? And I've been looking at the matchups, and there really isn't one that I look at and go, oh boy, that could be a real big problem in this series. I just love the way when the Warriors roster is together and healthy, how they match up with this team. And you talk about Bane, you talk about Peyton. Give me a matchup, Larry, in this series that makes you nervous. I'm trying to find one from a Warriors perspective. I can't come up with one.
There's one angle that makes me nervous, and it's the rebounding. I mean, but Golden State had 16 offensive boards in game 1. And the one thing about the Warriors that nobody really talks about is that their 3 sharpshooters of Curry, Clay, and Poole rebound the hell out of the basketball. Mm-hmm. Curry's a really underrated rebounder.
Yes, he is.
I think Poole may have had 9 rebounds in the last game. Klay Thompson is a very good rebounder as a 2-guard. So that to me is where Golden State is kind of counters Memphis a little bit. Is Memphis has got an inside advantage, but if they can't win on the glass,
they have no chance.
Warriors beat them points in the paint. Warriors beat them on the glass. So if Grizzlies can't win those 2 areas, this can be a very short series.
Well, here's the other aspect about the Warriors, which is so smart. So you talked about the offensive rebounding of the guards. So we talk about basketball experience. Draymond's out of the game. So you have your best rebounder, basically a guy that in the playoffs over his career has averaged almost 10 a game, right? So Curry, Poole, Thompson, they rebound better. They have to make up for the void of not having Draymond on the floor, and they're able to do that. Again, I go back to playoff experience. They know what needs to be done to win games. Think about the offensive rebounds with Draymond Green not playing for 2.5 quarters or whatever the hell it was. I mean, that's pretty remarkable. But again, I just go back to the Warriors know what they need to do as a man to win the game. Wow, Draymond's out. Hey, we're all going to have to rebound better, guys. Let's go. We got to crash the glass. We got to get offensive boards. And they're able to do that. And I just think that's why they're going to end up in the finals this year. They just, to a man, know what they need to do to win. And when a guy goes down, it's like, no big deal. We got you. We'll do it. How many times do we talk about that? Somebody goes down for the Warriors and they're able to keep going somehow, some way. So, I mean, I expect Memphis to rebound better in game 2. But, Larry, again, if they don't win game 2, I don't think they win a series. You think they're going back to San Francisco? You think they're going back to, play at Golden State's Chase Center and win games 3 or game 4? I don't see it. I really don't. I don't see it.
I don't either. Does Taylor Jenkins have a lineup adjustment? I mean, he started Xavier Tillman. He went with 3 different lineups against the T-Wolves in that first round.
Yep.
Does he yank Tillman? Does he what's the adjustment that Jenkins makes from game 1 to game 2 to give Memphis kind of a new wrinkle or a new look?
I don't think he's going to do a lot. And I'm going to go back to last series. Memphis, great regular season, number 2 seed, start the playoffs, and Minnesota goes in there and spanks them in game 1. Memphis is in the exact same position right now that they were in the first round, except for they're not playing Minnesota. They're playing Golden State. That's a big difference. Do I think he'll make some adjustments? Yeah. Do I think he's going to make major adjustments? No. Memphis was a number 2 seed in the NBA for a reason. All right. They know they're good. They proved during the regular season that they're good. They proved that they're not about just one guy with Morant based on their record without him. I think Memphis, and I don't want to contradict myself, I think Memphis is going to win game 2. I don't know if they win a game 3 or game 4, which makes this no more than 6, assuming that they would go back and win game 5, which I'm not necessarily going to assume. I think Memphis wins game 2 just because I think they're too good. I don't think they're a fluke, Larry. I don't think that they are a team that shouldn't be where they're at. They proved during the regular season they're worthy of it. they've got a good team. They're very well coached. Somehow, some way, I think they win game 2 and at least make this interesting going back. What adjustments will Taylor Jenkins make? A few. Again, Larry, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think Memphis, if you go into their locker room, they feel that they lost the game in game 1, that they let the opportunity right in their hand slip through. I think mentally they're going to be okay. I really do. I don't think you're going to see major adjustments from Taylor Jenkins.
It's going to be really interesting because if the Warriors go up 2-0 on this young Memphis team,
then it's over.
It's over. Yeah, it's over. And now you got the Warriors in a very dangerous spot where they've got all the experience. They're up 1-0 and they're loose in game 2. So I think game 2, and then you got Green coming back, giving them an emotional lift.
Yep.
It's weird. I mean, I thought this was going to be a tough series on paper, and when I watched the regular season series, but then the more I watch Memphis, the more I think, you know what, that Jenkins really got this young team to play at a level that very few teams in the NBA play at night after night after night, and because of it, he deserves Coach of the Year. But they also look at like a team, Grant, that unless Brooks starts to fire, unless they can get everything rolling, they don't look like they have another level to get to. I think they're going home. I really do.
Well, you make good points. I'm with you on Brooks. He absolutely has to be the Brooks that we're accustomed to seeing. Will the Warriors be loosey-goosey? I mean, the Warriors, they know what they're doing. They've been in this situation year after year after year after year. I mean, they know how to win games on the road. That's not a problem for them. I don't think Memphis's season was a fluke. I think they're really good. I think they proved that in game 2 when they had to win against Minnesota. That was the biggest game that they had all year, and they won handily. They won't beat Golden State, in my opinion, handily in game 2, but I do believe they're going to win. Only because the percentages and everything I've watched from Memphis this year tells me they're really good in games after they lose. They really are. They have a very good ability to bounce back after a loss. I'm expecting them to win game 2. Larry, it's not very often that a number 2 seed in a conference, barring injury, loses 4 games in a row. I mean, think about it. How often does a number 2 seed in a conference lose and get swept in a series? It rarely happens. Why? Because they're good, because you wouldn't be a number 2 seed. So I think as much credit as we're giving Golden State, and we should, don't discount how good Memphis is. They're really, really good. They really are. They're very good. They're good.
Interesting. Jackson J says in the Chronicle, there's an article that suggests Steve Kerr may end his run as the Warrior coach. If the Warriors get another ring, you think Kerr, what's your read? I mean, you think Kerr's a long timer? Do you think he's going to be there for years and years? He's a young enough man to stay there. He's making great money. It's a good situation. Or does, you think, I mean, he could have success on TV. He could kick himself back to a general manager's role, which is a lot less of a, I mean, you see the league in its entirety. The different roles. There's a different, a different energy level that you have to coach a team as opposed to being the general manager.
No question.
What do you see in his future? Do you think he's a future? Is he going to stay coaching? Is he going to step down? Is he going to retire back to the booth? GM? What do you see for Kerr?
He can go to the booth anytime he wants. So that will always be there for him. Would you leave a team that has Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Poole? I guess the point is, the only thing that really interrupted the Warriors' quote-unquote dynasty was injuries, right?
Sure.
I mean, okay. So when you look at this roster, and let's go by your analysis or your forecast, let's just, for sake of conversation, say they win a championship this year. Why would I think that they would not be the favorite going into the offseason to win the West and be in the NBA Finals next year? Curry, Thompson, Green, throw in Poole. I mean, throw in, put in whoever you want. You and I were talking about whether Wiggins would be on the team, but forget about him for a moment. Why would you, if you're Steve Kerr, if you really want to talk about success and everything that he has accomplished in the NBA, both as a player and as a coach, would you walk out of a team that you could once again label as a dynasty with maybe the best point guard or one of the top 2 or 3 point guards of his entire generation in Curry, and this team's ability and knowledge of knowing how to win. Here's something else, Larry. I'm just going to throw this out at you. Let's say Steve Kerr does not coach the team next year. Let's say they win a championship this year. And let's say the new coach comes in next year and wins a championship. Are we going to say, well, gee, Steve Kerr, anybody could have coached the Warriors through those years and won? I mean, you know how things talk about, right?
Some people will, yeah.
Right? So would you want that if you're Steve Kerr? Again, look at and again, I know it's a small sample size, Larry. Look at what Luke Walton did when he filled in that year for Steve Kerr, right? And we heard the talk, gee, anybody can coach the Warriors. Larry, you had people calling up your show and go, Larry, you could coach the Warriors. When we talked about Steve Kerr being so great. And you and I both know it's not that easy, but you understand the narrative out there. So if I'm Steve Kerr and I look at the nucleus, would I want to stop coaching this team and have someone come in and win a championship and have to go through all of that talk? I know Steve Kerr probably doesn't care about that stuff, but still, I'm just throwing out all the scenarios out there. I wouldn't want that. No, I don't think Steve Kerr is going to stop coaching after this year. It doesn't make sense to me.
How many rings does he have?
It's a health issue. What's that?
Yeah, I mean, the guy's got a ton of rings.
Yes.
Right? I mean, he's got rings and rings and rings and rings and money.
But he's young. But he's not 80 years old. He's not 70. He's in the prime of his life.
He could run for president. I don't want. I'm tired of hearing everybody's political message on these NBA press conferences. But you know what? If you got a lot of political thoughts, then maybe go run for office. If you're that wed to your political ideologies, go for it. Do it. Go for it. Right. I'm with you. I could see him doing that. I could see him doing that. I don't know that he wants to do it, but I could see it.
Hey, you make it if that's his aspiration. Based on his political views, which he's been very outspoken for, and I'm with you. I hate that. I'm so tired of politics and sports. It has put such a bad taste in my mouth. I mean, it really has. I'm so down with it, and I'm not a fan of it. But yeah, if he feels that he can make a difference in the world,
right?
Okay, by running for office. Then he should do that. Now, I don't know if he has political aspirations. Has he talked about that before? I don't know if he has.
Well, I think people have asked him about it, and he's like, nah, I'm happy just being a basketball coach. But maybe he's the coaching. That's why I wanted to ask you about coach versus GM, because a coach that's a bigger grind than a general manager.
Oh, no question.
And it's just so all-encompassing, where the GM role – maybe you have a little bit more of a life. Maybe you have a little bit more of your privacy, a little bit more time with your family, and you're still doing very well. You're still in a competitive endeavor. You're not in the booth. So, I mean, and I don't know. I have no idea if he wants to be the GM. I have no idea if Bob Myers is what his plans are. He's from here. I can't imagine he'd want to leave. But you never know. You never know. I just think that the grind of being an NBA head coach probably wears you out. That'll be my guess.
I mean,
it's a long year.
Maybe you could talk about what happened at Villanova this year. Coach K we knew he was out. We knew that. I'm trying to think of other coaches. How many coaches, let's keep it now to pro sports. How many coaches can we name? Maybe Bruce Arians this year, because Tampa should be pretty good with Brady back, and we don't even know what the real story is behind the scenes. How many coaches, Larry, say I'm done when a team still is loaded, is championship caliber, and in the middle of achieving greatness, because I think that's what we would define the Warriors based on what they've done, and now we're seeing what happens when they're healthy. I know we're only in round 2. I don't want to get ahead of myself. How many coaches, Larry, whether it's baseball, whether it's football, whatever, step down, retire, resign, call it whatever you want, when a team is in the middle of winning championships? Not a lot, Larry, right? Can you name one?
No, but let me say this. I'll counter this. Are the Warriors in the middle? I don't think so.
They're not in the middle, but if I'm going to pick
I think Curry, Thompson, and Green have all played their best basketball already.
Okay, I don't disagree with that, but you put the premise if they win another ring.
Right.
So I'm putting the premise out there. If they win the championship this year, Why would I think that they're not able to win it again next year?
Yeah.
I mean, we're not talking about Michael Jordan leaving the Bulls, right? We're talking about, yeah, I would say their best basketball is clearly behind them. But again, under your scenario, if they win this year, that means they're going to have to beat, let's just call it Phoenix, a really good number 1 seed Phoenix. And then, the East has got good teams left, or other than Philadelphia, those are all 3 good teams. Maybe middle is not the right word. Maybe I should say still. I look at the Warriors.
They're on top.
They're still okay. Let's just say that they are on the backside of the mountain, and we are. They're still, as we look at next year, without even knowing what's going to happen the rest of these playoffs, the Warriors are still an upper echelon team in the NBA with the roster they have, are they not?
Absolutely. And they have a young core. Core. Let me ask you one more on Kerr. He was at a career crossroads, or at least had an option in front of him. He could go to New York, or he could come to the Warriors. And he jokes about it now because, obviously he made the right call. He came to the Warriors. They've won rings. What would have happened if he had gone to New York?
Would have been a disaster because it would have been
a disaster. He would not have been able to turn around the Knicks.
No way. Not with James Dolan as owner. No way. No.
So Dolan is the key figure, and as long as Dolan's there, they won't win.
What's changed in James Dolan's tenure, other than James Dolan? He's there all the time, right? You've had general managers, you've had coaches, general managers, coaches, general managers, coaches, and it's the same thing. So yes, I do believe it's James Dolan. I believe the way he runs the Madison Square Garden and the franchise is a problem. And because he's the managing general partner, the league can't do anything about it. Do I think Steve Kerr would have gone to New York and had success? No, I don't. Do I think New York could have built a roster anywhere near Golden State? No, I don't. Do you see free agents wanting to go to New York? No. Can they attract the top free agents? No. Why would I think Steve Kerr would go to New York and all of a sudden they would just start attracting the top free agents? I think players shy away from the mecca of basketball in this country, Madison freaking Square Garden, New York City, Broadway, and yet free agents don't want to go there. Why? Because of the way the franchise is run. So no, I don't think Steve Kerr would have had success in New York. Why would I think that Steve Kerr would have success in New York when no one else really has in James Dolan's tenure as owner of the Knicks? Why would I think that?
I asked Steve about it. I said, Steve, what would have happened if you went to New York? He said, I would have gotten fired. That's what he said. He said, I would have gotten fired. It's great.
I love that. That's what he said. I love it.
Isn't that honest?
I love Steve. Honest. Steve's the best. I absolutely love that guy. I love interviewing him. I love talking. I mean, I have so much respect for him. I just love the way he is direct and how he sees everything. That's a great answer.
Isn't that a great answer?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me ask you a Warrior question. There was Windy on his podcast. Brian Windhorst threw out this little nugget that has gotten Warrior fans up in at least discussing it the last couple of days, and that is the potential that everybody sees a divorce coming in Utah between Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, and that Gobert is going to wind up being shipped out. And the speculation is that Golden State for Wiggins and Wiseman might be his destination. I was looking at some of the numbers on his contract, and he's due to make a lot of money. I think you're talking about, let's see, Gobert has 4 years and $170 million left on his deal. $46.6 million player option for 25-26. So it's not going to be easy for Utah to move him. Wiggins has an expiring $33 million deal. Wiseman, I think, makes up roughly 10. So the two, it works on the cap. If you're Golden State, would you make that trade? Weisman and Wiggins for Gobert?
Probably not. And I'm a big Gobert fan. I mean, I do, but we've seen the knock on him in the playoffs, right? Probably would not make that deal. His salary for a big man makes me nervous with the way the game is played today. I mean, he is truly.
He's been healthy, though.
Huh?
He has been healthy and durable.
He has been healthy, absolutely. They call him the Stifle Tower for a reason. The guy defensively changes games. He's not a sieve offensively. You know, I would rather answer that question after I watch the Warriors in this playoff run, okay? Because I like the adage, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yep.
And if you and I both are picking Golden State right now to win the West, and again, I'm just, for sake of conversation, we're saying that, why would I make a change of that magnitude? Do I really need to get that much better? Why would I take that chance? Again, you talk about young players. For one player, that kind of salary, again, I go back to, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So if the Warriors have that success and we watch them in the NBA Finals, I know I would not make that deal. But I want to watch the remainder of this series with Memphis and then the next series to see whether or not, okay, what they have is good, but it's not good enough anymore to win a championship. So now I got to go out and do some shopping. I got to wait and see what happens.
Well, how would you play your James Wiseman card if you're Golden State? Because they, Iguodala ripped them and said, hey, they didn't do everything they could to help the core win this year. And what he meant was they didn't trade the Wisemans of the world for older players. James has not been able to get on the floor. He's got a knee injury. I don't know if it's chronic. I don't want to call it chronic, but he's got a meniscus surgery. He's had an arthroscopic procedure. He's still having pain and swelling. Yep. His future is very much in doubt because of it. If you're Golden State, he's obviously an asset. He's an asset, though, that if you sell off of him, you're not selling off of him at the top. You're selling off of him beneath. They're in their championship window and maybe the defending champions this summer. So how would you play your James Wiseman card? Do you take another chance that he's going to get healthy, or do you pawn him at a lesser cost and get an asset that you can use going forward?
First of all, it's good. If you're a general manager of another team, you have to ask yourself, based on the scenario you just laid out, would you trade for Wiseman? I mean,
right.
So
I would if I can get him for pennies on the dollar.
Yeah, but you're probably not going to get him for pennies on the dollar. So I'm being very transparent. I haven't seen enough of him to give you how I honestly feel about him. I haven't watched him play enough.
He hasn't played.
I know, but I mean, I'm even talking about. Yeah, I'm talking about
G League. Yeah.
I'm talking about I'm just talking about watching him. So you're asking me an unknown. I do know this. Rudy Gobert is really, really freaking good. I mean, I do know that. I mean, say what you want about Mitchell and Gobert, and I don't know what the real story is there, but Rudy Gobert is the real deal. Rudy Gobert changes games. Rudy Gobert, I mean, is a difference maker, particularly on defense and what he's able to do. I don't know about team chemistry. I don't know all about that. Again, I need to watch this series against Memphis. I need to watch the next series and then find out if the Warriors don't have enough to win a championship. Right now, Larry, based on watching them play, I think they have enough to win a championship right now. And if they do, why would I make a change of that magnitude? I probably wouldn't. I'd probably keep what I have.
Yeah, roll with him and see if you can get him healthy. Hey, they've invested this much in him to this point. Let's finish in the final minutes we have together here with the Kings, because so many Kings fans, and I hope I'm not leading you towards a topic you don't want to go towards, because
bring it.
You know what? Well, everybody in NorCal wants to hear your thoughts on these things.
Sure.
Joe Dumars. Joe Dumars was brought in. He was heavily involved in the search for the new general manager. Mm-hmm. I thought he was going to be the new general manager. He's now left the organization in part because he wanted to be given control of the front office. And it sounds like Vivek didn't want to give him that control. He's got Monty McNair there. What's your read on Dumars' tenure with Sacramento? He seemed like he had a great run going in Detroit. I mean, they did take Darko over Carmelo, I believe, under his watch, right? But Joe Dumars is respected, I think, pretty respected. He comes to Sacramento. I kind of thought he was going to be the guy running the show. It never seemed like it ever materialized. And now he's out. What's your read on his whole tenure in Sac?
He shouldn't have been brought in the first place. I mean, what do you have a general manager for? They brought him in when Vlade Divac was there, and he just all of a sudden one day is there. It's Vivek Ranadive again. He has too many cooks in the kitchen. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Who's in charge of the Sacramento Kings, Larry? I read Mark Stein, the esteemed basketball writer, yesterday talking about Vivek Ranadive's infatuation with Mark Jackson, and he's the leading candidate to be the coach right now. Say whatever you want about an owner. If the general manager and the coach in sport, if they're not aligned at the hip, it's not going to work. Okay?
Right.
It's just not going to work.
It's the key relationship.
So if I'm in the owner, I'm letting my general manager hire the coach. I don't want interference from other people that I brought into the front office. I like Joe Dumars too. I respect the hell out of Joe Dumars, and I'm very happy for him. I didn't understand why Joe Dumars was brought in to the Sacramento Kings anyway. Is Vivek on the phone with him after he talks with Vlade Divac, asking him what he should do? I mean, where's the trust factor? It creates issues in your front office when you have too many cooks in the kitchen. When the Kings have an assistant general manager in Wilcox, they have a general manager in Monty McNair. How many front office people do you have, and who's making the decision? I want to know who's hiring the coach for the Sacramento Kings. Is it Monty McNair, or as Mark Stein pointed out, is it Vivek Ranadive? If Mark Jackson is named the new head coach of the Sacramento Kings, I think we have the answer. Okay?
Yeah.
So, and I made a rant on this today, Larry. Let's not even talk about 1 through 6. Let's talk about 7, 8, 9, and 10 in the West this year. Minnesota, the Clippers, New Orleans, and San Antonio. 7, 8, 9, 10 this year. If you want to just say the Kings might be better than San Antonio, I'll grant you that. Who else are they better than with the teams I just mentioned? The Lakers will find a way to get better. I didn't even mention them. They're not better than Minnesota. They're not better than the Clippers with Kawhi coming back, even without Kawhi. They're not better than New Orleans, and we don't know what's going to happen with Zion Williamson. They may slip ahead of San Antonio. There's not a draft pick out there that's going to come in and change the Kings drastically this year. You're not going to get top-tier free agents to come to Sacramento. So if you're Monty McNair, I've always said this, Larry, it doesn't matter who the coach of the Kings is. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. How many coaches do you have to go through before you realize that coaching is not the problem? Coaching is not the problem with Sacramento. I think they have an ownership issue. They obviously have a talent issue. And I don't see how they're going to ever get better. When I say ever, I don't see how they get better in the near future. I don't see it. Unless there's that star-stud, franchise-altering player in the draft, and you get lucky enough to get them, I don't see how this franchise is going to elevate above the teams that I just mentioned. So I don't really think it matters who the coach is. I don't think it matters. I've seen enough coaches to go through the revolving door in Sacramento, Larry, and I say to myself, well, obviously coaching's not the problem because they have the same record year after year after year with the same problems year after year after year, and yet they've had all these different coaches. So that tells me coaching's not the problem.
Yeah, I mean, look at the coaches they've had. I mean, Yeager's a good coach. Malone was a good coach. Musselman's a good coach. George Karl was a great coach.
Yep.
They can't get it done. Sean Don't makes a donation. He says, "Love your show, Krug. We miss you terribly in Sac, Grant. Any thoughts on the coaching search?" Well, that's what we're talking about right now, the coaching search. The Kings, according to the reports, are interviewing 3 finalists, and the 3 finalists are Mike Brown, Mark Jackson, and Steve Clifford. And if you believe the reports, Monty McNair very much in the camp of Mike Brown, the Warriors' top assistant, who coached LeBron in Cleveland. And then Vivek is after Mark Jackson, if you believe those reports. Let me ask you this about Mark Jackson. Why has Mark Jackson, why is he, persona non grata around the NBA? It seems like coaching wise, was it the chapel services that he was forcing Bogut to go to? Was it the fact that he kind of brought his religion into the room? Was it his ranting on the corner? Remember that there was some rant on the corner that got taped and people heard that and he sounded crazy. He helped develop Clay and Steph and Draymond. He gave Steph and Clay the green light to hoist as young players, and they got up so many shots that helped their development. He also gave the Warriors a toughness, a defensive identity that they had not had prior to his arrival. So he did some real positive things here, and every time his name comes up, Steph and Clay and Draymond make sure that they give Mark his propers and his respect. But obviously it didn't work here. And he did turn. Is it the fact that they were a 53-win team and Kerr takes them over and they win 67? Is that the deal? Maybe they were in fact underachieving under Mark, and Kerr got the most out of them. He hasn't gotten even an interview or a realistic sniff since he was let go by the Warriors. What do you make of it?
Two things. First of all, Sean, thank you for your comments. And Sean, do I get half of that $5? Do I get $2.50?
Exactly.
First of all, what you said about Mark Jackson with the Warriors, that team was not ready when Mark Jackson coached them to be a championship team. Okay? I didn't think the Bulls were ready to win a championship when Doug Collins coached, because you had a young Michael Jordan. And then when Phil Jackson came in, obviously, I really believe that. I mean, look at Curry, look at that team. They were young, Larry. They weren't ready, in my opinion, to make that next jump. And I thought Kerr, similar to what Phil Jackson did in Chicago, walked in at a perfect time. I've heard the same stories you've heard about Mark Jackson. And I made this comment on my show that I do on Listen App every day yesterday. Why is it, and that's a long time ago, Larry, how many years ago were we talking about where Mark Jackson was the coach of the Warriors?
2015, 2014, something like that.
Okay. So it's 2022, and Mark Jackson is still trying to get a head coaching position in the NBA. And yet you talk about Curry, you talk about Thompson, you talk about Green, and their positive comments, not afraid to speak out and say, well, we like Mark, blah, blah, blah. And yet you have three potential Hall of Fame players who publicly back a coach. And yet here we are 7-8 years later. And he, as you said, we don't even think he's been getting interviews, but if he has, he's not making it to where he's sitting down in front of a microphone having a press conference as a new head coach. So is it the baggage that we can talk about off the court? I don't know. I've read the same things that you've read. I don't know how Mark Jackson does in an interview, but I do know this. It has been reported by several that he's the one of three finalists in Sacramento, and Mark Stein yesterday put him in the lead as the front runner, that Vivek Ranadive loves Mark Jackson. I can tell you, just based on social media, Mark Jackson would not be a popular hire in Sacramento. The vast majority of polls and everything that I'm reading in Sacramento.
Among the fans, you mean? Among the fans?
Yes, among the fans. Now,
fans. Gotcha.
Do fans really know? No, but I'm just talking about, it wouldn't be. And Mark's got a lot of confidence. So I don't think Mark, look at what Mark, think about Mark growing up in New York, playing at St. John's and literally getting booed out of New York. All right. So Mark's been through it all. I don't think that fans being pissed if Mark Jackson's named head coach is going to bother him. His attitude is, don't worry, I'll make them happy. But I'm just telling you right now, it's not a very popular decision.
Two last things before we let you go. And last night we saw Maxi Kleber take just a scary fall. I mean, he fell on his back in game one. He looked like he potentially was going to be paralyzed. I mean, it was just a terrible looking fall. I'm just kind of wondering, all the years you've been around NBA basketball, what are the worst spills you've ever seen? What are the worst, situations where you're like, the guy hit the floor and you're like,
you know what?
Took a gasp.
There was one at Oracle Arena against the Warriors.
Oh, I think, was it on Iguodala or Cousins?
I can't remember. No, it was before that. And if memory serves me correct, the player was taken off the floor in a stretcher.
Scary.
And I can't remember the player. That was one of the worst. I've seen some bad ones. Because I started doing the games in '88 when the game was so physical back then, where guys were.
Oh my God!
Kurt Rambis, Rick Mahorn, Bill Lambier. I did that whole
Anthony Mason. I mean,
I'd have to go back and think, but probably in that era. I saw some.
Roland in the text strand here says it was the Pat McCaw.
There you go, Pat McCaw. Great job right there, Roland. Yep. Excellent job. It was Pat McCaw. That was horrible.
Yeah,
horrible.
Yep. It was scary last night. That was scary. Yes. And he was able to play through it. Yep. Okay, last one. The Warriors listen to their players most of the time. Curry, Thompson, Green. Heck, Green was part of their draft evaluation team. I mean, he's literally there for the workouts pre-draft. And I think that's smart. I really do. Because why? Because the players know players. And I want to hear what they have to say. But on a key decision for Golden State, Clay and Steph and Draymond said, we want Avery Bradley at the end of camp. And despite the fact that their three biggest stars all said, you know what, we want Avery Bradley. Larry Harris, Bob Myers, Joe Lacob's kid, Steve Kerr, Mike Dunleavy, all the guys who make up the Warrior front office said, you know what, we're going to go with Gary Payton. And look at the year that Gary Payton has had. Yep. He has had an amazing year. Now, this is the second time we're talking about Payton in this live stream. But I just think it's interesting. The Warriors listened to their players a lot, and yet they had 3-star players saying, go with Avery Bradley. You need Avery Bradley, an on-ball defender. And the front office said, guys, we hear you. We got this. Thank you for your contribution. We're going with Payton. I thought it was really maybe the biggest decision of the year, because Payton has given them a defensive level that even Avery Bradley at this point would not have been able to provide. I think Payton's been a key figure for the fans. Not only that, Grant, Payton is a finisher at the rim. He'll block shots, he'll rebound the basketball, but what really, when teams think they're playing 5-on-4 and you turn your head, as soon as you turn your head, he slips back door. They're throwing him the lob. He's finishing at the rim. Well, he's a finisher for Golden State. But I think it was interesting that they didn't listen to their stars.
Again, if you want the coaches, if you want the players to be the general manager, then make him the general manager. I think it's fine to have input. But I'm a big believer. Maybe I'm old-fashioned. Players play, coaches coach, GMs do their thing, owners do their thing. And to me, I think it's important that there's open dialogue with those players to the front office. Here's the key. I think those players feel that they're being heard, that it's not going in one ear and out the other. And I think they respect that. I think they respect the fact that they're at least being asked for their opinion, and they're giving their opinions to the front office, and the front office is listening. But ultimately, if you're the front office of the Warriors, your job is dependent on the decisions that you make, not the decisions that your players want and what they want to make. So I think that's how you have to run your franchise. I think it's okay to have input from your players, but you got to make the decision. Your ass is on the line. Your job is on the line. And as you said, that may have been the best move the Warriors made all year. And look where they are. And again, we may be talking a month from now, talking about the Warriors going to the NBA Finals again.
Jackson J says, such great discussion and insights about the NBA and the playoffs from Larry and Grant. Grant, you're awesome, man. I love having these conversations with you. Let me pay the bills on a couple of these sponsors, and then I got one last question for you on the draft. Our sponsor today is Telmetrics.co, and if you're an orthopedic surgeon or an occupational therapist, a chiropractor, or a physical therapist, Telmetrics is designed for you to use in your practice and will greatly benefit your patients. Telmetrics uses computer vision and artificial intelligence and provides a platform for outpatient rehab therapy services, both in the clinical and telehealth environments. Using Telmetrics can improve your patient's experience and much more. So for all your sports injury needs, and if you're a physical rehabilitation specialist, make sure you go to Telmetrics.co, Telmetrix.co. And thank you to Casey Bateman and the people there at Telmetrics. And our other sponsors, Dan Coach Emilio. Give Dan a call. He's a retirement planning specialist, and he's one of the best. He's at 925-628-9966, securemoney.com on the web. A lot of uncertainty in the world. You want to make sure your money is not in any kind of uncertain way. You want to make sure that your retirement is locked in, and Danny can help you get a growth on your principal retirement account. He'll set up an appointment. It's not a one-size-fits-all deal. He'll sit down with you, talk to you about your portfolio, your goals, where you want to be, and map out a strategy. 925-628-9966, securemoney.com. Danny's fantastic, a good friend, and one of the best retirement planning specialists, and he is a Bay Area sports fan to boot, so you can talk a little Bay Area sports with Danny as he's setting you up for the future. NFL draft. Last question of the live stream here. I think that the NFL Network, ESPN owned the draft for years and years and years. Mel Kiper made it his own little mini cottage industry. It's an incredible thing that Mel did. And then ESPN has been kind of in the driver's seat. Then the NFL Network jumped in against them, and it's the league. So you would think that they're going to have better this and better that. I'm that nutty guy who watches the draft twice. I watch it on ESPN, and then when the draft is over, I taped it on NFL Network, and I watched it on NFL Network. Grant, I could not believe the difference in the two coverages this year. The draft has lost its way on the NFL Network, and I thought ESPN was 100 times better than the NFL Network. ESPN had highlights on every single guy. They at least went to somebody, whether it be Mel, McShay, their college football crew, somebody to actually tell you about each guy that was drafted as the picks came off the board. NFL Network was like interviewing people and music and all this, weak. Their analysis was weak. They would skip players. They would skip in 5, 6, 7 picks. They haven't really talked players. I mean, they've totally jumped the shark on their coverage. I thought ESPN kicked the NFL's butt all over the place in the draft coverage, but that's just me handicapping the draft coverage. But give me your thought on the draft that was. I know you're a big G-Men fan. Any direction you want to take it, but give me a takeaway on the draft. Do we have Grant? There we go. Do we have you locked up there, Grant? I'm not sure if you heard me there.
I got you. You know what? I didn't watch the NFL Network, and I only watched the first round on ESPN. So I watched the NFL Network last year. First of all, I'm very tight with Charles Davis. I love Charles Davis, and I've known him for a long time. Love him. So I'm actually I watched the NFL Network only because of him. But this year I was watching it on ESPN, and I was watching the first round. And unlike you, I'm not like you. I don't watch the draft in its entirety. I really don't. And being a New York fan, Giants, after the 7th pick, I'm like, I don't care anymore. But I did care. I still watched it. And I was at a restaurant bar, and they had ESPN on, and I was not, in all fairness, listening to the commentary on ESPN. I was actually reading subtitles a lot. So here's my question. Does ESPN ever criticize a pick? Do they ever talk in a negative way about a player that's drafted and they feel like a team made a mistake? Did you hear that at all?
They used to do that.
Yep.
That Mel Kiper used to do that, but I don't. His days of questioning the Bill Tobins of the world have come and gone.
Yep. And I know that you and I are going to have a difference of opinion on this. I've always said I hate draft day grades. They don't mean a damn thing to me.
Go back. No, I'm not. We agree.
Okay. And I have a difficult time even evaluating draft. I mean, just go back to Baker Mayfield's draft. Look at Baker Mayfield, Saquon Barkley, and Sam Darnold. We talked about this. Mayfield's a backup quarterback now. Darnold has not shown anybody they can play. And Barkley, well, he's been on a bad team with a bad offensive line. I don't know how good Saquon Barkley is, but I wouldn't have drafted him with the number 2 pick when you have a horrible team. And again, look at all the mistakes every year, Larry. We're going to go back 3 years from now, and we're going to look at the top 10 players taken in this year's NFL draft, and we'll go, gee, what the hell were they thinking? Gee, that player's a bust. You know what's going to happen? I know what's going to happen. It's very hard to figure out who can play at the next level to a degree that you think. There are going to be players, again, 3 years from now that we look back on and go, gee, that player was a high draft pick that turned out to be a bust. Happens every year.
Yep. If you look at the numbers, I remember one time when Bill Urbanek, I was working with Bill Urbanek with the Gold Miners, and he had just done NFL personnel, and he's like, Larry, you love the draft, but let me tell you, these guys all suck. They all are terrible. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? He's like, most of these guys can't play dead. And he was great. And he showed me the numbers. And you know what? The failure rate in the draft is off the charts. Forget some of these guys. A huge portion. In fact, he convinced me the draft in the NFL is about picking false favorites because they're all favorites. They're all the best player at their college, the best player in their conference. They've won this and that and that. They're all great until they're not. So he said to me, there's going to be a high percentage of busts. Some guys are going to bust because they have bad attitude. Some guys' bodies will break down. Some guys will be a wrong scheme fit. You have to figure out why the person's going to succeed or fail. And it's people handicapping people, and it's very, very different.
I heard on I think it was ESPN Radio the other day, Mike Tannenbaum, the former GM, made a comment that even blew away the host, right? That there are more, other than the first and second round, there are more Pro Bowlers among undrafted free agents than the other rounds. I'm just like, wow, right?
2/3 of the NFL get picked on day 3 or after the draft. Grant, tell people if they want to check out your podcast, where they can find it and how often you're putting it out there, and tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, if you just go to my website, it's probably the easiest way. If you don't like that.com, I have all my work on there. I'm on an app called Listen App, which is basically just like a radio show in the afternoons. You can download it. You can go to listenapp.co. I'm on that. So again, the easiest way to look at all my work, just go to my website. If you don't like that.com. Great coming on with you again, Larry. I just love doing this with you, man. It's awesome.
Man, you are awesome. You are awesome, and we appreciate your time, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, buddy.
Take care.
You too.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you asked for. Here for whatever you bring me, getting handled. I answer to no one, I don't need to have.